Alright, so I totally didn't film this the same day as the other magic thing now. I just wore the same clothes, have it, and I'm in the same place. Anyway, so with a commander deck, which is what we're going to be doing today, you have to do one thing first, and that's pick a commander. Now, there are special rules with commander decks, and that's you can only have colors that are on the commander card. And your commander has to be a legendary creature. So for this episode, for this deck, I've picked Ifara, God of the Polis. She's a blue-white. Now what that means is I can have blue, I can have white, I can have blue-white cards, I can't have any other color. Now, that includes if I've got a blue card that, like, say, has flashback for red mana, I can't use it. It can't have any emblem that isn't on the commander card. Anywhere on it. Now, with the commander deck style, what you're doing is you have 100 cards with the commander. So it's 100 total. And none of them can be repeats. You can't have 2 Mind Skulks. You can't have 2 Chant of the Sky Fangs. They all have to be unique cards. None of them have the same name, which makes it kind of a pain. Which is why I picked a card that I have a lot of cards in. So I'm going to be going over how to build it. Now what you first want to do is you want to decide, we got the commander, so you have the colors. Now you want to decide kind of what your colors are going to do. I'm going to use my white as control and flying, and my blue as debuff and draw. Because I do have a special card that I just got in 2015. So, yeah, I'm going to go through building it. Now you want to pick land base. So I'm going to do about 35 lands and 64 other cards because my commander counts as a card. So you got to keep that number in mind, otherwise you're going to have to whittle back down. Alright. First I'm going to be looking for cards that have the specific abilities I wanted, flying or control. So with this card, because it's a white but it has that little red thing, the fire emblem, I can't use it. So it can't be used. You gotta put it aside. Okay, now that I have all my white cards, I get to do the fun part, which is go through and make sure I didn't repeat, which does happen. So that doesn't work. So I have to take one of these out and replace it. Put that in. Alright, so the white portion's done. It's got a lot of flying, a lot of enchanted creature can't attack or block, first strike, I've got some convoke in there, I'm buffing it up. When building a deck like this, because you have one of every card and you can't be sure you're going to get them or the mana, you don't want a ton of high drop creatures. So I've got a lot of low drops, I've got a few high drops, and then I've got a few cards that buff them up really nice. So then with the blue I said I was going to do draw and debuff, I believe. Okay, so now I've got 32 whites, 32 blues, which normally I don't go that even. I don't choose what I'm doing based on number, but for this one I did. So that makes 64. I have a commander, which makes 65, and I'll be adding 35 lands. Now the best way to decide what lands to get, because you don't want even blue and white, or even whatever colors you're getting. What you do is you count the devotion. Now for those of you who don't know, devotion is the amount of the mana, specific mana. So this is blue, this is devotion blue. These three would be 4, because there are 4 total blue mana costs. And what you want to do is you count the devotion to blue, then you count the devotion to white, and you see, okay, I have X more blue than white, so I should have a few more blue lands than white, and you try to just guesstimate what would be the best strategy. Now, with all decks, my final advice would be is decks evolve. You should never have a deck and then be like, okay, this is done, this deck is perfect. No deck is perfect. You'll always find some way to improve it, and you should always look to improve your decks. I know that as my second commander deck I made, this one's going to have a lot of flaws. So as I play it with others, I will change things around. I might take out some of the control and add a few more flyers or different creatures, maybe add some death touch if possible, that sort of thing. Now you can have artifacts. So Gorgon's Head is a great artifact. It's a 1-drop, costs 1 to equip, and it gives creature death touch, which that card has saved me in so many games because I'm able to give a 1/1 token death touch. And then that's a perfect shield, unless they have first strike. But you can't have everything. So, best of luck making your own commander decks. I really hope all of you do great, and that you find a style of Magic you enjoy playing. Other than that, have a wonderful day. Something I forgot to mention, with the commander decks, the rules are basically the same. The only difference is, you've got your normal, you've got your deck, you've got your hand, you've got your battlefield, and your graveyard. And then you have something called a commander post. It's a little to the side of the field of where you're playing. And what happens is you can summon your commander at any time you have the mana, and he comes to the battlefield. Now, if you would die, instead of going to the graveyard, he goes back to that commander post. Now, Ifara costs 4 to summon. So once you get 4 mana, bam, a summoner. Something happens. For some reason, she's destroyed. Well, not destroyed. She's indestructible. So maybe something with death touch gets her down below 0. So she would die. Now, instead of going to the graveyard, she goes to the commander post. Back in the same spot. Now, I can resummon her, but every time you have to resummon something from the commander post, it costs an additional 2 colorless mana. So now Ifara would cost 6. She'd cost 4 colorless, a white and a blue. Say she dies again, I'm really bad with keeping her alive. I mean, she's just horrible. So I want to summon her again. Now it's going to cost 8. You see how it adds up? Now, that's why, in this case, I chose someone who's indestructible. She's less likely to die, I don't have to keep paying her cost, and her abilities are actually pretty good, especially in this kind of deck. So, that's the final rule of Commander, the one that gets people off. It's got to be a legendary, and they can be summoned as many times as you have the mana. And the mana cost does accumulate.